On this occasion of the sesquicentennial celebration of the college, we thought that people of Mangalore and the teaching fraternity and young friends need to renew their commitment to the nation. They need to get motivation, they need to get inspiration to do good things in the society. And that is why we have planned for a series of lectures. And in this connection, we also contacted Professor Rajmohan Gandhi way back in July 2018. We got a response stating that he is out there in US and will be visiting India in December, and he will be very happy to visit this institution. And he informed me to contact him somewhere in the late October, which I did promptly. And to my surprise, he said that he is willing to come to the University College Mangalore.
Have to contribute to how to bring life back to the villages of India. As some of you will know, Gandhiji wanted every Indian to be both a producer and a consumer. We are all consumers. We have to eat to survive. We need a home, we need some space to sleep. But not all of us is necessarily a producer. So Gandhi had this idea that by spinning thread, an old person, a young person, a person otherwise unemployed, even a person not so well, could contribute something. Every Indian could be both a producer and a consumer. But anyway, I mention this because I want to urge all of you to face this very great national challenge of how to restore life in the villages of India, because India's population is now almost 1.2 or 1.3 billion, and 1.3 or 1.5 billion people can't all live in Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta. Not possible. We have to restore life in rural India. Now, another point. Whatever be the subject of any lecture I give anywhere in the world, people want to know, did you know Gandhiji? Do you have memories of Gandhiji? Questions like that are important, but maybe we could reserve that for the question and answer session after I give my talk. Now, in 1909, Gandhi wrote this amazing book called Hind Swaraj. Now, Hind Swaraj does not mention the word Satyagraha, although Gandhi had already started practicing Satyagraha before that. But it gives the principle of Satyagraha. Of course, it talks about Swaraj. It does not mention the word Sarvodaya, but it speaks about everybody. So, of course, Sarvodaya is in contrast to the idea of majority welfare. Not the success or prosperity of one group, not even of the majority group, but of everyone. Do not leave anyone out. That, of course, was the great concept of Sarvodaya. And Swaraj, yes, everybody wants political independence. So in Gandhi's idea, Swaraj not only meant independence for India, that Indians should rule India rather than somebody else from outside should rule India. Indians should rule India, Swaraj, self-rule, but also that every Indian should rule herself or himself. Every Indian, young or old, female or male, should rule herself or himself, so that the work left for the government is very little. Each of us can rule over ourselves, Swaraj. And if Indians can rule India, political Swaraj, then of course it will be a huge, huge change. Now, in 1915, Gandhi had just come back from South Africa. He had spent 20 years in South Africa. In fact, Hind Swaraj was written while he was in South Africa, although it was about India, written while he was in South Africa. In 1915, he was back in India, and one of the first things he started was an ashram in Ahmedabad, and he called it the Satyagraha Ashram. And because he believed in Sarvodaya, in not excluding anyone, exclude nobody, therefore in his ashram, as members came a Dalit family. They were seen as untouchables, Dudabhai Dafda and his family. So Gandhi welcomed them into his ashram. And immediately there was an uproar, and there was a rebellion. And the rebellion was led by two people very close to Gandhiji. One was his right-hand man called Magan Lal Gandhi, who was a distant nephew of Gandhi, but in real life he was extremely close. He was more like a son to Gandhi. But Magan Lal Gandhi and his wife Santokh Ben, they came from quite a conservative background, and to them the idea that a Dalit family would live under the same roof, eat food from the same kitchen, and eat together in the same space. This was too much for Magan Lal Gandhi, more so for his wife, and she said, I cannot stay here. If this family is to stay here, I will go. And Magan Lal Gandhi said, if my wife goes, I will also go. That was one rebellion. Within few weeks of his starting this ashram and admitting this Dalit family. And the second person who raised a voice of rebellion was the voice of Kasturba. We are celebrating Gandhi's 150th anniversary, but we are also celebrating Kasturba's 150th anniversary, and of course 150th of University College here. So Gandhi said to Kasturba, well, if you must go, you must go. But I cannot ask this family to go. Magan Lal Gandhi and his wife actually left. Kasturba Gandhi started to leave, but from the door she came back. And after some time, Magan Lal and Santokh Ben also came back, in Gandhiji's words, having washed clean their hearts of the idea of untouchability. Having washed clean their hearts, Magan Lal and Santokh Gandhi also came back to the ashram. So that was Sarvodaya in 1915 in his ashram. And 2 years after 1915, 1917, the Champaran Satyagraha took place. Now, please don't be shy. How many of you have never heard of Champaran? Please raise your hands. How many of you have never heard of Champaran? Yes, don't be shy. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Now you can. So Champaran is a place in Bihar. And it is a place where in 1917, Gandhi and his associates launched a very important movement, a Satyagraha movement, which had quite an impact. It had to do with farmers, Indian farmers who were growing indigo. And indigo by this time was not earning enough income, but the British plantation owners, the British owned the farms. And the Indian farmers were made to work in the farms, and they were forced to produce this indigo. And they suffered a very great deal, and Gandhi went to solve that problem. Now what was unusual about this was as follows. In 1917, Gandhi, who came from Gujarat, went all the way to Bihar, very far, Champaran, in northern Bihar. In those days, people from one part of India did not go to other parts of India to start movements. People started movements in their own district or in their own area. But Gandhi went to deal with that problem. And once he was there, the British authorities said to Gandhi, "You should not interfere with our administration the way we are dealing with the farmers. Go away. Go back to Gujarat. You are an outsider." So Gandhi said in the court, "I will not go. I will not go. You can jail me if you want. You can hit me if you want. You can punish me if you want. Sorry, I will not go." Now, he said no to the mighty British Empire. He said no in a small courtroom in Bihar. But the news of this was published all across India. And in those days, in 1917, 101 years ago, the idea that anybody would say no to the powerful British Empire was a completely new idea. And this had an impact on many people, and one person on whom this had an impact was, who knows this, on which individual had received the largest impact of the Champaran incident? His name was Vallabhbhai Patel. Vallabhbhai Patel was also like Gandhi. He was a barrister, he was a lawyer, and he was in Ahmedabad, the same city where Gandhi had started his ashram. And Vallabhbhai had heard about Gandhi, and many young people of Ahmedabad were going to Gandhi's ashram. And Vallabhbhai used to make fun of them. He used to say to them, "What will you learn from Gandhi? Learn from me. See how I play bridge. I can play bridge. I can teach you how to defeat the British in political chess game. Gandhi will only teach you how to make khadi. He will teach you how to clean lavatories. He will teach you how to clean grain. He won't teach you how to win Swaraj." But when Gandhi said no to the British in Champaran, Vallabhbhai Patel jumped from his chair in the Gujarat club in Ahmedabad. "My God," he said, "this is fantastic." And after that, he joined Gandhi's movement. So that is Swaraj, the call for Swaraj. That in obedience to my conscience, I will be willing to disobey a law from the British Empire. Now, 2 years after that, in 1919, there was a law passed by the British government. It was known as the Rowlatt Act. Some of you know about this. Rowlatt was the name of the judge who headed the commission that produced the recommendation that led to the law known as the Rowlatt Act. And the Rowlatt Act was a curb, was a restriction on free speech. That if somebody carried a leaflet in her or his pocket saying that British rule should go, just carrying that leaflet in your pocket could mean that you could be jailed for 2 years. And there would be no appeal, and you might not have lawyers to argue for you. Now, Gandhi was always a writer. He was a journalist. Thank you. So when the Rowlatt Act became a law, Gandhi said that for Swaraj, for free speech, we should oppose this. And we will oppose it non-violently. And a remarkable group of people, men and women, met in Ahmedabad. Vallabhbhai Patel was one of them. Sarojini Naidu was another. And an Englishman, a man called B.G. Horniman, who was the editor of the Bombay Chronicle. He was also a member of this. And there was an industrialist, a Muslim industrialist, who was also a member of this group. There were about 20 people, and Gandhi was one of them. And they said, "We will non-violently oppose this law. We will non-violently oppose this law." And that led to a great movement all across India. One result of that was a very unfortunate result. I'm referring to the Jallianwala Bagh incident, where so many hundreds of people were killed by soldiers. Now the people who fired the guns that killed all these people, many of them were Indian soldiers, but they were all under the command of an English general called General Reginald Dyer, D-Y-E-R. And this incident occurred on April 13, 1919, in the city of Amritsar, and hundreds of people of atrocity during British rule. Hundreds of people were killed. They were protesting. They were against the Rowlatt Act. They wanted India's Swaraj, and they were killed. On 10th April, 3 days before this, something else had happened which many Indians are not yet have forgotten. On 10th April, 3 days before this incident of Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar, there was a demonstration by thousands of men. 3 days before the Jallianwala Bagh incident, 5 Englishmen were killed. So this is April 1919. In December 1919, there was a great meeting of the Indian National Congress in Amritsar. This meeting was planned a year previous to this, that in December 1919, the Indian National Congress will have its annual rally in Amritsar. But by this time, Jallianwala Bagh had happened. And Gandhiji was also there at this session, and every important figure was there. Lokmanya Tilak was there, Maulana Muhammad Ali and Maulana Shaukat Ali were there, Chittaranjan Das from Bengal was there, Bipin Chandra Pal from Bengal was there, many great leaders were there. Motilal Nehru was the president of this session. And Gandhiji was also there. And at this time, Jinnah was also a member of the Indian National Congress. He was there, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, very important figure in the Congress. He was also present at this session in Amritsar. Another person present at this session was a lady many of you have heard of, Annie Besant. Many of you know about it. And in 1917, she had been the president of the Indian National Congress. Now she was an Irish woman, but she had made Indian home rule her life's mission, and she had made India her home. So this great session of the Congress was discussing many things, including the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And a resolution came before this session to say that we condemn what had happened. We want the governor of Punjab to be removed. In fact, the Viceroy of India should also be recalled, and various other demands against the terrible massacre that had taken place. And then there was another paragraph at the end of this resolution which said that this House also deplores the violence from the Indian mobs on April 10, 1919. So there was a discussion. And many people said, we like the first part of the resolution, but we do not like the second part. And one leader from Punjab came and said, the second part of the resolution could not have been drafted by an Indian. No son of an Indian mother could have drafted the second part of the resolution. And the suggestion, the implication was that this Irish lady, Annie Besant, must have drafted this. You know, these days, any white person anywhere in India, he or she may be from Denmark, Australia, people will say, oh, there is an American. But in 1919, any white person anywhere in India was an Englishman. We know that Annie Besant was Irish, but as far as those people were concerned, meeting in Amritsar, she was a white woman, perhaps an English woman, No son of an Indian mother could have drafted this. It must have been Annie Besant. So there was a vote, and the vote said, first part of the resolution, very good. Second part of the resolution, defeated. The next day, the President of the Assembly announced to the Assembly that Gandhiji wants to speak on yesterday's discussion. Yesterday's discussion? It's over, let's discuss something else. But Gandhiji was respected. He was not yet the unquestioned leader that he became. Yes, some people called him Mahatma. But he was at this time in 1919 December, one of several very remarkable figures. He was respected, but he was not the unquestioned leader. All right, let Gandhiji speak. So Gandhiji said, I was thinking about yesterday's discussion and the remark that no son born of an Indian mother could have drafted that second paragraph in which the violence from the Indian side was deplored. Then Gandhiji said, after long reflection on the question, thinking deeply and long about it, I came to the conclusion that only the son of an Indian mother could have drafted the second part of the resolution. And then Gandhi said, I drafted the resolution. And then Gandhi spoke as if his whole life depended on that question. Sarvodaya. We can't leave anyone out. We want to protest if Indian lives are killed, but we will also be sorry if English lives are killed. Sarvodaya. Leave no one out. You must have heard of a man called K.M. Munshi. Some of you have heard of him. He was a very big lawyer, a very big writer, Gujarati speaking. At this time, he was a very young man. He was present at this meeting. He has recorded all these details I am telling you. And he said that when Gandhiji spoke as if his whole life depended on that question, and he spoke with this passion, after that, they took a new vote and they decided to reinsert the second part of the resolution. What was the result of Gandhi's Sarvodaya? That the Indian freedom movement occupied the moral high ground. India was not only fighting against economic exploitation, against political domination, India was fighting for moral justice. And that, of course, was a very powerful weapon in the hands of the Indian freedom movement. I don't want to go through Gandhi's long life, although so many incidents in his life can tell us about Swaraj and about Sarvodaya. But I want to mention a couple of things towards the end of Gandhiji's life. I think some of you know that Gandhi's Swaraj and Sarvodaya have had a very large impact also on the American civil rights movement. You've heard of Martin Luther King Jr. and many other great leaders of the African Americans, the American blacks as they're called, who have fought for their equality in the United States, and they have been inspired by Gandhi. Now in 1945, when many of the Indian leaders had been released from prison, Gandhi also was in jail, Nehru, Patel, everybody else. An African-American journalist called Denton Brooks, writing for a newspaper called the Chicago Defender, an African-American newspaper, interviewed Gandhi and said, please give a message to the American blacks, to the African Americans, because they are also struggling, they want to be inspired by you. And Gandhi said, tell them my life is my message. Tell them my life is my message. It's a well-known statement from Gandhi. But many people do not know that that statement was first made when an African-American journalist asked Gandhi to give a message. A little after this, a very interesting African American from America called Stuart Nelson came and met Gandhiji when Gandhiji was in Noakhali in East Bengal, now in Bangladesh. Many of you know about Noakhali because that is where, as was true of some other parts of India in 46 and 47, some very tragic and very shameful killings took place where one group behaved atrociously towards other groups. In some parts of India and Pakistan, Muslims attacked Hindus and Sikhs. In other parts, Hindus attacked Muslims, and so forth. So, Stuart Nelson was an African American admirer of Gandhi. He was a professor at Howard University in Washington, D.C., a very famous black university in America. He came and met Gandhi and he said to Gandhi, I want to work with you to bring peace in Noakhali. You are there, I will come and be with you. So they worked together in Noakhali. So there was one wonderful moment in Noakhali. Gandhi was in a Muslim majority village where 90% were Muslims, but there were a few Hindus. And Gandhi was speaking to them. He was also holding a multi-faith prayer meeting where there were maybe bhajan like Vaishnava Janato, and sometimes a verse from the Quran, and some other verses from the Gita or from the Upanishads, and some songs, prayer songs. And Gandhi would say a few words at the end also. But when Stuart Nelson, this African American who was a Christian, was with Gandhi, and Gandhi was facing this largely Muslim audience, Gandhi asks Stuart Nelson to sing a Christian song as part of the prayer. So when you imagine that scene, imagine this village in Noakhali, Muslim majority village. Gandhi is a Hindu. He has a few other colleagues with him, and he has this African American Christian with him, and this Christian sings a song, and Gandhi translates the song into Hindi. He does not know good enough Bengali to translate it directly into Bengali, and a professor with Gandhi called Nirmal Kumar Bose translates Gandhi's remarks from Hindi to Bengali. So this is Sarvodaya. Nobody left out. African American, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Bengali speakers, Hindi speakers, English speakers. This happened actually it was on Christmas Day in December of 1946 in Noakhali. Some weeks after this, Stuart Nelson meets Gandhiji again in Calcutta. And he says to Gandhiji, I want to ask you a question. For 30 years, you have been speaking about non-violence all across India. Freedom is now about to come. India will gain freedom largely through non-violence, and this is an amazing thing. However, Gandhiji, why are Hindus and Muslims attacking each other 30 years after you have been teaching them non-violence? Stuart Nelson's question to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And Gandhiji's answer was something like this. This is not the direct words, but I'm paraphrasing his answer. Gandhiji's answer was, I have been teaching Indians two things: fear not and hate not. Fear not and hate not. You know, Jawaharlal Nehru in one of his books has said that one of Gandhi's most amazing achievements was that he removed the fear from the Indian heart. In Champaran, when he said no, that enabled millions of people to say no to the British Raj. So fear was a very big thing in India at the time, and Gandhi enabled Indian people to overcome fear. But Gandhi said to Stuart Nelson, they learned fear not from me, but they were not so eager to learn hate not from me. They wanted to keep their bitterness, their prejudice, their hatred, their anger. At first, the hatred was against the British. Even in 1919, when Gandhi said we should be sorry if Englishmen are killed, many Indians did not like it. And in 1947, the anger against the British was transferred to anger against fellow Indians. And Hindus said we must take some kind of action against the Muslims, and the Muslims said we must take some kind of actions against the Hindus. Hate not was not as popular as fear not. That is where Sarvodaya was not so easy in the battle for Swaraj. So I will now end with one remark. You know that Gandhi was killed in January 48, and India's constitution was passed at the end of 49. It came into effect on January 26, 1950. And one of the great figures, architects of the constitution was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. Now, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar had many differences with Gandhiji throughout his life. Many differences. And sometimes these differences found expression in newspapers, in articles, in books. But when it came to the drafting of the Indian Constitution, and when it came to the creation of the first Indian government of Free India, Gandhi said to Vallabhbhai Patel and Jawaharlal Nehru, "You must have Dr. Ambedkar in your cabinet. Nehru, you are Prime Minister. Patel, you are Deputy Prime Minister. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar must be in your cabinet. There cannot be Sarvodaya in India without Ambedkar in your government." And Ambedkar had the responsibility of creating the Constitution. And the Constitution had this wonderful rule that India is for everyone. India is not for a particular group. You know, there is a chapter 5, article 5 is on the citizenship. Who is a citizen of India? You should read that. And it says there that if you're living in India, and if one of your parents was born in India, if you are living in India, and if one of your parents was born in India, then you are an Indian citizen. It does not say that you have to be a man to be a citizen. There is no gender test. It does not say you have to be a Hindu to be a citizen. There is no religious test. It does not say that you have to be a particular caste. There is no caste test. An Indian is she or he who lives in India, and one of whose parents at least was born in India. Sarvodaya. No one left out in the Swaraj that was contemplated. So, through his life, Gandhi showed us ways to fight for Swaraj and to fight for Sarvodaya. But the battle does not end with Gandhi, of course, or with Nehru, or with Ambedkar, or with Patel, or with Subhash Bose. Cannot. Sometimes people say, oh, Gandhi was a wonderful man, but partition took place. Gandhi was a good man, but he failed to prevent partition. That's correct, he failed. Some people say, Gandhi was a wonderful man, but there is so much corruption today in India. Gandhi was a wonderful man, but there is so much filth in today's India. You know, if you go to America, nobody says Lincoln failed because there is so much corruption in today's America. That George Washington was wrong, Lincoln must have made serious mistakes because America has so many problems. Only in India, we want Gandhi not only to solve all the problems of his time, we want him to solve all the problems of our time. Please feel free to criticize Gandhi to your heart's content. Gandhi was not a perfect man. He was not God. He was not a Superman. He could not solve all your problems of his time or of our time. But if we think that somebody who died 70 years ago should have solved all the problems of his time and all the problems of our time, it means we not only don't understand Swaraj and Sarvodaya, we don't understand the meaning of manhood or womanhood. If we are women, if we are men, we will take responsibility for Swaraj, for Sarvodaya, for every single problem in today's India. Thank you very much. Love India's amazing achievements, India's goodness, India's greatness, India's spiritual wisdom. But Gandhiji at the same time said that every country has its own great wisdom and nobility. And Gandhi was one of the first to say that we must not only see what is so wonderful about India, but we must also have the courage to see what is not so nice about today's India. If there are evils in our society, we must fight them. If there is injustice, we must fight them. So Gandhi's love for India meant that he loved India so much that he could not tolerate any injustice in India or anything that was unattractive in India. Thank you. National independence. Then every country that is nationalistic may have a clash with other nationalistic countries. That's a very important point. Therefore, it is very important to combine Swaraj with Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya is not an Indian concept. Sarvodaya means the whole world. Everybody should have welfare. Everybody should have progress. So if you take that Sarvodaya must always join Swaraj, the nationalism or national welfare, national progress must go side by side with the welfare of the whole world. The poorest country in the world, in Africa, in South America, if there are a handful of people living in Greenland, all of them must be part of our vision for a new world. If Sarvodaya, we really understand. But you ask a very important question, madam. And remember that Gandhiji's Swaraj was not just that a nation must rule itself, that foreigners must not rule a nation, but Gandhiji also said every individual must rule herself or himself. Donald Trump must rule himself. So that is a very valid point. So Gandhiji's concept of Swaraj, that every individual should rule herself or himself, is valid for every nation, every individual in the world.
Gandhiji Park, and our area is called Gandhi Nagar. So all these things, I think it's a great thing, in Bangalore. How many of you know there is a Gandhi Park? How many of you have come there? And once, a lot of Muslim women come with burqas. Somebody came to me and said, why do you allow them to come with burqas? I said, we cannot allow anybody to come, nagade means, without wearing anything. If they want to wear burqa, it is their privilege. If you want to wear a sari, it is our privilege. If you want, nowadays children never wear sari also. So these are all things, we should be aware and love our country, love our people, whatever community they are. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, sabko mera pranam. It's a beautiful song.
I'm so thrilled that this wonderful contribution to today's discussion has been made by this very young lady here. Now please stand, sir. No, I want everyone to look at you. I want everyone to look at you. Please stand here.
I am a very young old lady, but I studied in the same college, government college. And Madam Gomati, Ketu Madhav Rao, all these were Vinayabai, they were all my teachers. Now hardly anybody is there. I am also looking up, but by God's grace, I think, this Bangalore is my hometown. And Calcutta, I lived in Calcutta for many years, Jyoti Basu's neighbor, and that is we call Tavaruru, this is my mother's town. Calcutta is my mother's town. Poor people, Calcutta, poor people, but very cultured people. I've learned Bengali, I can sing a few songs in Bengali.
Wow.
So these are all, I've been to Shantiniketan the other day. Rabindranath Tagore, Tayyab Mehta, all these things, if we are aware in India, that we are Indians, whatever your religion is, we are Indians, Bharatiya, Indians. Then only our country will come up much faster. This is my thinking. Thank you.
I want the other young lady, this one young lady has spoken, but I want the other young ladies who are sitting in this hall at different levels to see if after 60, 70 years, you can come here and speak with the same passion with which she speaks. So I want some other young people to ask questions. Yeah.
So earlier you said that you talk about whether you have seen Gandhi in real life. So if you talk about it now, I'd like to know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So first of all, let me say that my association with Gandhiji's family is a technical association. It is true I am his grandson, but it's a very minor difference because all of you are his grandchildren. Because Gandhi tried, one reason why some of his family, Kasturba said, why are you having this untouchable family in the house? But Gandhi said, I want all of India to be my family. So all of you are his grandchildren also. But it is correct. Gandhi and Kasturba had 4 biological sons. Unfortunately, they had no daughters. Between them, these 4 had 15 children. So they had 15 grandchildren, but 8 of them have died. 7 grandchildren are living, and many great-grandchildren and other great-great-grandchildren are living, most of them in India, some in the United States, some in England, so South Africa, several in South Africa. So the number of those who are technically related to M.K. Gandhi is also quite large now. But before I say more, I want to repeat. All of us are related to each other. A, because we are Indians, but also because we are human beings. I mean, we are related to all of you. We are related to everybody in China. We are related actually to everyone in Pakistan also. And to everyone in America. To everyone in all over the world. We are all members of the human family. Now, yes. So most of his life, Gandhiji was either in prison or he was in some campaign in some one part of India or the other, or he was trying to bring people together. He was a peacemaker, trying to heal wounds and bring people together. So he never had, of course, a settled home. When he was a young man in South Africa, he made lots of money. He was a very good lawyer. But then he gave his money to the community. He did not keep it for his family. And he adopted poverty. Gandhi was a poor man not by birth but by choice. He became a poor man by choice. He had no home. And he was always either in prison or in different parts of India. So it was not so easy for his grandchildren to be with their grandfather. But as it happened, in the last 2 or 3 years of his life, Gandhi spent many months in Delhi, which is where I was born. My father, Devdas Gandhi, the youngest of Gandhiji's 4 sons, was the editor of a newspaper called the Hindustan Times for many years. So Gandhi was in Delhi a good deal in 46, 47, 48, January he was killed. And I saw him many times. Sometimes along with my siblings, my brothers and my sister, and my parents if they were free, I would take part in the prayer meeting at 5 o'clock, where sometimes Vaishnava Jana was sung or other songs and prayers were said. I would go before the prayers, join him for the prayers and then walk back with him afterwards. Sometimes at about 8:45 at time, which was at night, which was Gandhiji's bedtime. He would sleep at 9, get up at 3. So sometimes my father, mother and us would go and see him for a few minutes at about 8:45, just before he was going to sleep. And although he had decided to make all of India his family, he was always happy to see his grandchildren. And when I was 10, I was going from 10 to 12 and he was going from 76 to 78. So, you know, as is true in many families across India, the custom is if you're a grandchild, you bow before your grandparents. Sometimes people touch the feet. Now, he did not want us to touch his feet, but he did not mind so much if we bowed before him. And when I bowed before him, he gave a very big thump on the back. Thwack. It was his Ashirvad. But it was so strong, although he was an old man, and he was often fasting, his hand was very tough. So I remember his thump. And I know that I knew as a boy also, that he was very keen on frugality, on economy, on spending very little on yourself. So one day, I was wearing a new pair of spectacles. And I knew that grandfather might not like this so much, or he might ask me questions about it. But I also said to myself, he is meeting so many people, he will not notice that I have a new pair of glasses. You have a new pair of glasses today. I was prepared. I said, you know my eyes are bad, I needed a new pair. You also needed a new set of frames. You could not have had just new lenses, he said. He tried to teach me that way. But also what remains in my memory is my walk with him along with others to the spot of the prayer meeting at 5 o'clock. I was often sitting near him, and there was a congregation of hundreds of people, sometimes a few thousand people, who took part in these multi-faith prayers. I'm talking about 47 and 48. So by this time, independence had come or was coming, but also partition had come or was coming, and killings had come and were coming. So there was tension in Delhi. Even in the prayer meeting there was tension. And as some of you know, in Gandhiji's multi-faith prayer meetings, the very first item was a Buddhist chant. The second item was the opening chapter of the Quran. It's a very short chapter, Al-Fatiha. And those of you who have not read it should read it in translation. You should know what it means. Now, and of course there was from Upanishads, from the Gita. If Christians were present in the audience, there could be a Christian hymn also. So in those tense times, some people were unhappy when the Al-Fatiha was read. We don't want you to read this. I'm near Gandhiji. Sometimes right next to him, sometimes very near him, and I find some people standing up and doing this. Gandhiji, we don't want this. So I say to myself, if these people now come to him and attack him, he has no bodyguard, he has very few clothes. Will I be able to protect him if people attack him? That sort of question I would ask myself. And Gandhiji would say to the audience, well, what do you think? These people don't want me to read this. Do you want me to read it? Oh, yes, of course, please go ahead, please go ahead, please go ahead. Then he would say to the objectors, do you know what it says? No, you don't know what it says. Please withdraw your objection. It says some wonderful things. Find out the meaning. And they would say, all right, go ahead. Sometimes they would not allow him to go ahead. So Gandhiji would say, all right, if you don't want this thing from the Quran, I will today not even have the verse from the Gita or the Upanishads. So I'm learning from him how to deal with protesters, how to deal with objectors, how to bring the democratic spirit alive, how to create a consensus. But I also could see that Gandhiji, even when he was attacked by people, he did not give up his convictions. He did not say, "Acha, kal se hum chhod denge." He stuck to his deepest convictions. So sitting near him, I learned that lesson. First, be kind, be friendly, be polite to those who disagree with you. Try to create consensus, but never, never give up your conviction, even if you are only one against the whole world. Vaishnava Jana was a wonderful song that Gandhiji loved. Another wonderful song of his was Ekla Chalo Re, Tagore's song. Tagore, who came here, after whom this auditorium is named, Ekla Chalo Re. That also I learned from Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi through interaction like that.
Rural people, the farmers and all that, and the government is not even disclosing how many farmers have committed suicide. So my question is there a need now to revisit Gandhiji's concept of Gram Swaraj once again?
Thank you for a very important question, and I'm sure you noticed that I began my talk with the villages. My very first remark before I said anything was that we must bring life back to India's villages. That 1.3 billion people can't live in Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta. That we must restore life in the villages. And Gandhiji's concept of Gram Swaraj, that independence of the village, by that he meant the entire village, including every community and caste, not just one dominant caste. Entire Gram should meet and should decide what we should do. And by the way, in Gandhiji's detailed ideas of a village, he said a village should also have a theatre. It should have a drama hall. It should have space for play and for enjoyment. So Gandhi was not for a very dull and boring life. He wanted an attractive, an intelligent, a captivating life. But you're absolutely right that the neglect of villages, by the way, even if the country adopts a particular kind of model, it does not prevent people from having a Gram Swaraj in their Gram. Nobody can prevent anyone here who is connected to a village to say, in my village, I will try along with my other friends to create some kind of Gram Swaraj. None of us is dependent, none of us is crippled by the laws or the patterns that others have imposed. We are all independent people. Each one of us can take initiatives, but I'm very glad you've asked this question, because India's future, in fact India's immediate future, depends on the survival of our villages.
How can you give us a concept of Sarvodaya for present days? And some journalists criticized about Gandhi that he partitioned India and Pakistan. And can you please elaborate how Gandhi faced the situations during partition of India and Pakistan, which forced him for the partition? Thank you.
So thank you for two very important questions. One, how can we re-establish Sarvodaya or equal affection, goodwill for all communities in today's context? And your second question is, what about the charge that Gandhiji was responsible for India's partition? As for your first question, I would say that young and old in this room should follow the example of this young lady who spoke earlier. You know, what she says about all public spaces, who should be welcomed, everybody should be welcome. Each one of us can wage a fight in our own sphere. We cannot control all of India. We may not be able to control newspapers or the television media, but we can certainly influence our own circle. We can speak to our relatives, we can speak to our neighbors. We can also listen to them. By the way, one very important thing we can learn, not only from Gandhiji but from others, is listening. We Indians are wonderful talkers. Talk, 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 talk. I was in Parliament for a while. Many MPs would come to the House floor to give their speech and then leave. When others were speaking, they were not present. If we are to establish goodwill among communities, we must listen to each other, not just talk to each other. So the question of having Sarvodaya or welfare of all or friendship for all is a very challenging question, and each one of us must discover what we can do about it. And we must do about it because today poison is being spread. Some people today deliberately say some horrible things. They want to set one group against another. So it is a very sad situation. So our task is not easy. But all of us should enjoy a good fight. If everything was easy, we would not enjoy it. We want a tough challenge. And especially young people like this lady and me, we love good challenges. Now on partition. Yes, it is absolutely true that Gandhiji failed to keep India united. Why did he fail? Did he not try hard enough? Well, he tried as hard as he could. Every breath of his, every day of his, every article of his, every speech of his, every letter of his in the last 10 years was dedicated towards preventing India's partition. But why did he fail? Because while Gandhiji was spreading the notion of that we can all live together, other people were spreading the notion that we cannot live together. And this notion was spread on all sides. Many Muslim leaders said that Muslims cannot live with Hindus. Many Hindu leaders said Hindus cannot live with Muslims. And some of these leaders who believed in division were also very eloquent leaders. They were very charismatic leaders. And their words spread to all parts of India. So putting it very simply, Gandhiji's message of Sarvodaya and partnership and brotherhood and sisterhood was countered by an equally passionate propaganda for division, for a Hindu India, for a Muslim Pakistan, for Hindu rule, for Muslim rule, or Sikh rule, or whatever. So, in that contest, Gandhiji, who was not a superman, who was not God, he was a remarkable human being, he failed. He failed, and he could not counter this poison in the wind. But remember, he did make this very interesting suggestion towards the end. Some of you know this. When Nehru, Patel, everybody said, all right, we'll agree to partition, we'll agree to partition. Gandhi said, wait a minute. If we invite Jinnah to become the Prime Minister of India, with Congress support, maybe he will give up the Pakistan demand. But Nehru said no, Patel said no, Rajaji said no, Rajan Babu said no, the Sikhs and the Hindus of Punjab said no, 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 no. So Gandhi was rejected by his closest colleagues. Now Gandhi had helped these colleagues. He had in fact raised them up. He had served them, he had loved them, he had cared for them. They were the successors, he was growing old. So when you are running a business or a school or a college and you are very old and about to retire, and younger people with you don't agree with you, can you impose your will on them? No, you must make way for them. So the human Gandhi could not overcome the very powerful currents of division in India at the time. And we face the same challenge today, young man. Today, as we sit here, there are some who are spreading this negative notion, divisive notion. But this time we will, God willing, not fail. And we will come together because the world wants India's role, and an India that is at war with fellow Indians cannot lead India, lead the world. But all of you together, you apply your best mind, you apply your best imagination, you use your heart, you use your talents, you use your fighting spirit. And you know, the diversity of Mangalore, my goodness. What is so amazing about Mangalore? So many languages, so many religions, so many cultures living together in amazing harmony. You make this solid, make this substantial, make this effective. And from Mangalore, there could be a current that will flow across India, and the tragedy of 47 will not be repeated in India again.
Sir.
Yeah, there was a young lady there, yes.
Sir,
All right, yes.
this is about one of the fascinating books that you wrote in 1986, namely Understanding the Muslim Mind.
Did everybody hear the question? Was Gandhi disheartened when his colleagues rejected his ideas? Well, they did not reject all his ideas. After all, India's constitution makes India an India for all. You know, there were some people who said if Pakistan, they want to make it a Muslim state, India should become a Hindu state. But Sardar Patel, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rajaji, Rajan Babu, Dr. Ambedkar, everybody said no, 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 India will be a state for all. So one of the very important ideas of Gandhiji was accepted by everyone, even though on partition they disagreed with him. As for being disheartened, Gandhi was a realistic. After all, his own eldest son disappointed him in so many ways. All of us face so many disappointments in life. Okay, so we all learn to live with disappointments, despite being disheartened. So Gandhi was always a fighter. A fighter loses some battles, but he's ready for the next battle. And Gandhi continued to fight battles till the moment he was killed. Sometimes with limited success, sometimes with very great failure. So controlling human beings through state policy is never an easy thing to do. Remember that Gandhi was alive in 47 when India became independent. Did he say that there should be some kind of ban against cow slaughter? No. Because he knew that whatever you may wish is not so easy to accomplish in law. So certain beliefs you may have that what is good for humanity or what is good for a country, what is good for a people, that people should become vegetarian, people should do yoga, or people should meditate, or people should eat in a disciplined manner, people should do exercise. You can't have laws for all this. August 7, 1935, Kasturba was present at my delivery to assist my mother. So I have a very intimate relationship, and I saw her in prison before she died, when I was 7, 8 years old. And the British allowed the family to meet her before she actually died. You are absolutely right that Kasturba's role in Gandhi's life was a very great role. You know, somebody earlier mentioned goats. You mentioned goat. So I want to tell you why Gandhi drank goat's milk. In 1919, just before the great movement against the Rowlatt Act, Gandhi became very, 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 very ill. He thought he was dying. And the doctor said, you don't eat chicken, you don't eat meat, you have to drink milk. But Gandhi had taken a vow that he will not drink milk. Why had he taken that vow? Because he had gone to Calcutta. He had seen that cows were being very badly treated. Very badly treated. Cattle were being killed and cows were being badly treated. And Gandhi said, I will not drink milk. So when he thought he was dying. He had taken a vow against milk. Doctor said, you have to take milk. So Gandhi said to Kasturba, this is my dilemma. Kasturba said, when you took the vow against milk, were you thinking of goats? No, I was not thinking of goats. Then why don't you take goat's milk? So Gandhi took goat's milk. Kasturba saved his life, and she did that on many other occasions. You're absolutely right. Kasturba, Gandhi, like many other women, has to be recognized, has to be understood, has to be honored. Thank you so much.
Sir, I am Somshekhar. Sir, many things are being said about the relation between Ambedkar and Gandhi. You also mentioned it. A lot of things in recent days, media and social media are being appearing. In fact, Ambedkar was hating like anything Gandhiji. He was hating to the core. That type of things are coming, and we heard and many articles also prepared. Can you just throw some light on their relations, and if at all that type of we know what Gandhi said about in the induction of Gandhi's feeling, but about Ambedkar we do not know, but this type of things are there. If you know something about these things, can you just throw light?
So when Gandhiji was killed, Ambedkar was a member of the Indian cabinet. He went to Birla House and he cried. Ambedkar did not hate Gandhi. Ambedkar opposed Gandhi on many occasions. But Ambedkar knew that Gandhi was behind the invitation to him to be in the cabinet. So Ambedkar, as I said, there is a very famous Dalit leader has written about this, of Ambedkar's visit to Birla House where Gandhi was staying, and he cried when Gandhi was killed. So, it is not correct to say that Ambedkar hated Gandhi. Yes, Ambedkar had many sharp political differences. And at different times in his life, even afterwards, even after the constitution was passed, when he was unhappy for some other reasons, he became again quite critical of the Congress, even of Gandhi. But we have to take historical statements in their context. When did Gandhi say what he said? What was the context? When did Ambedkar say what he said? What was that context? If the contexts are carefully examined, and if the life of Gandhi and the life of Ambedkar is carefully studied, we will reach the conclusion that their agreements were much greater than their disagreements. Affection between them was much stronger than any lack of affection between them, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, isn't it amazing? Partition was a very great tragedy for India, you might say a failure of Gandhi. But when Ambedkar became the architect of the constitution, and the constitution was passed and equality was accepted, that was a very great change, which to some extent compensated for the damage of partition, to some extent. So the Gandhi-Ambedkar-Nehru-Patel partnership was a very great consequence for the story of independent India. And I will give you if you read my book on Gandhi, I've also written a book on this question. Actually, there's a book called Founding Fathers in which I discuss Gandhi and Ambedkar. There I have discussed this question also in some detail. Gandhi's attitude towards the blacks of Africa. So that remark, if you can always take some isolated statement from its context and then say that he believed like this. So that statement which Gandhi, not quite correctly in that way, but in some such statement that Gandhi may have made or did make, does not represent Gandhi's thinking at all. Gandhi was a very great friend of the Africans. The fight of Indians in South Africa, fight of India for independence, was of a great inspiration to the fight of Africans for their independence, Africans for equality, and Nelson Mandela knew all this. Nelson Mandela has said more than once that in spite of Gandhi's unfortunate remarks like this, that as a young man, Gandhi is a very great inspiration for us. So we should go by what Nelson Mandela says, not by what somebody then says on the basis of some context, some remark torn from its context.
I think we can complete question and answer session.
One person who was not mentioned during the entire session is Chakravarti Rajagopala. Please make a words on that.
No, I'll repeat his question. He says that Justice Kasturba was not mentioned, Chakravarti Rajagopalachari was not mentioned. I will only say this, yes, Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, who once was the Premier of Madras Presidency, to which Mangalore belonged. So he has a special connection to Mangalore, I agree with that. I must also say that my name Raj Mohan, Raj comes from Rajagopalachari, Mohan comes from Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And Gandhiji once complained to Rajaji, you have put your name before my name.
Chief guest of this program, a special lecture on Swaraj and Sarvodaya, a relook. Professor Raj Mohan Gandhi, Mrs. Usha Gandhi, the principal of the University College, Dr. Uday Kumar, distinguished professors and builders of the university, Professor Vivek Rai, Professor Surendra Rao, Professor Janardhan, Dean Faculty of Arts, Professor Kishore Naik, distinguished invitees, my colleagues from the university and this college, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to steal the sheen out of this whole program by saying more, because we have heard enough, and it has been a memorable experience listening to Professor Raj Mohan Gandhi. He started with saying the life of India lies in rural villages, and we all have to contribute in upliftment or putting more life into those rural masses where the life of India exists. More so, for the youth, he has given a very good message of what Gandhiji has told through his actions. Something like, say, fear not, hate not. The pause that he put between the words Sarvo Daya, a small pause there, Sarvo Daya, and then Swaraj, self-rule, ruling over the self. What has happened these days is selfishness or the I-ness has become more, because of which all these problems are occurring in the society. Probably we all rule ourselves, show some patience that is required, and have the habit of listening to others. Then that concept of ruling over self, Swaraj, will come in, and that will help the Sarvodaya of the society that we are looking for. One good lesson that I learned throughout his talk was protest against exploitation, but also be sorry for the pain that you caused to others. It's not just we protest that we are facing injustice, but being sorry for what we cause, the pain that we cause for others, is what is a good lesson that he has told us. He reminded of my father telling me, forgive if somebody hurts you in the name of God, but be the first one to say sorry if you have hurt somebody. That made me emotional at that moment. My life is my message, is what Gandhiji has told. His goodness, love for everyone, and the ways and means to fight justice, towards the fight injustice, fight for justice, is what youngsters have to do, with patience to listen, patience to take elders' advice and grow further. Passion about being Indian and human is very important. The diversity that he referred in Mangalore culture probably has to come in youngsters, and there we can start a movement of unity in diversity, and come out of the ignorance, come out of the hatred that has been in our minds, in our hearts, and probably there we can really look at the democratic spirit, or bring about the democratic spirit alive among all our youngsters. Go for a new world, a new vision, create a new vision for a new world, become a part of the human family, and see that you grow in the context of Sarvodaya, and then see everybody happy around you and create a good atmosphere, a goodwill, is the message that we all take from him. And I hope all of you have enjoyed the almost 2 hour session that he has been talking to us, standing here, taking us from the memories from, say, back into history from 1909, where the first book on Hind Swaraj, when he was in Africa, to moments that happened till 1919. So reminding us all those things, many of the things which youngsters may not have heard. Thank you very much, sir, for coming and bringing us alive those moments. So I would say so much, and I hope all youngsters will carry a good message from his lecture, the special lecture today. Thank you very much.